BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, online provides you with all the action and ability to watch the games as they happen. Largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC. Head to BetOnline today, and don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your welcome bonus for your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. Welcome to another edition of Believe in Giants. Bob Papa, two-time Super Bowl champion Carl Banks. The Giants are taking on the Ravens on Sunday. Now, listen, I know that the Giants are in the middle of an 8-game losing streak, but we did not do a podcast earlier in the week because we're tired of the losing. How's your arm feeling? Carl had surgery this week.
Yeah, folks have a torn triceps that's been reattached. And so I was down for a few days, but I'm back up and we're ready to rock and roll.
Hospital for special surgery?
HSS did the job. Dr. Hotchkiss.
Dr. Hotchkiss did it, huh?
Yeah.
They really do a good job there. I had my knee done there a couple of years ago, and they're very efficient.
And look, folks, I wish there was a real story to tell about me falling down a flight of stairs or something athletic happened and it popped, but nope.
You broke up a bar fight, something.
Nah, 6 inches in front of me. I reached out to touch the wall to catch my balance and pop. And I was like, this is the most non-athletic way to go out for 8 to 10 weeks if I ever known one.
So that's the recovery time now?
Yeah. I mean, it's begun. The cast is off and I'm in a brace. So they've got me doing a few little minor things. I'm always a good patient. So I'm going to just do what the doctors say, but do it as best I can.
You weren't always a good patient.
I was always a good patient.
No, come on. In 1990, when you had that injury.
I was a great patient and a great teammate all at the same time because this is the good patient, the great patient in me. I asked the doctors, is there anything else that could happen to this wrist if I play in the game? Doctor says, we're giving you surgery. As soon as you get home, you're going straight to the hospital. I said, well, can I do any more damage? She says, well, I could pad it up. If you can take the pain, we'll make sure you don't hurt it any further. I says, well, give me 2 Tylenol and pad it up and let's go. That's what happened.
And then a few months later, you were holding a Lombardi trophy.
That's right.
Carrying Parcells off the field. I
was very aggressive, but very good at following my rehab orders. And Mike Ryan, who was one of the best of Ronnie Barnes' tree, really put in the work to get my wrist going and get the scar tissue all broken up. And it was a good thing.
Mike went on to be the head athletic trainer for the Jaguars. Tom Coughlin brought him down. And then now you can see him on NBC as part of the Sunday Night Football with their online stuff and all the different ways that you could watch the game. Mike is down there on Sunday Night Football getting all the injury information and feeding it to the truck and the announcers and everything else. Speaking of injuries, well, the Giants are very injured. You got to like the way the young guys answered the challenge as far as, hey, this is your shot, man. You're going to play in your first NFL game, and you got to deal with Alvin Kamara. Yeah. And for the most part, Carl, they did pretty good.
Listen, man, I'm so proud of the effort and the execution of these young players. Like you said, there are a lot of guys who played in their first NFL game. And then there were existing players that were on the roster, but that weren't playing much. Guy like Trey Hawkins, right? Showed you a few things. Number one, his growth from, being in Las Vegas last year and couldn't tackle a pillow to now sticking his head in there. Unfortunately, I think he's hurt his back, but got an interception, very active in every phase of it. And that shows some character. It shows some pride. And hats off to Shane Bowen. And, for those who decided that they wanted to come into my timeline and, because I said there are no more victories, but I was proud of the effort. If I can sit here for 10 weeks straight ripping this defense for being a poor tackling team, a defense that did not have a plan on how to stop the same type of runs, surely I can give them credit when those things have been corrected. So for the folks who, had issues with what I said, co-parter, that's the reality of it. That's how sports work. It doesn't change their record, but it does acknowledge that players played with pride. It acknowledged that these coaches did some eval. Look, we can always say it's too little, too late, but I'm dealing in now. What did we deal with last Sunday? We dealt with Alvin Kamara, one of the best receiving and running backs in the league, who is much better than the kid they faced prior to that, Rico Dowdle, right? Head and shoulders better than Rico Dowdle. So don't tell me, oh, it's a banged up offensive line for the New Orleans Saints. Well, heck, the Dallas Cowboys, they didn't have much going for them on the offensive line, and Rico Dowdle ate them alive, but they came in and they shut Kamara down. They did a great job, and I'm taking my hat off because I'm not the fraud who's angry just to be angry. I am going to acknowledge when these kids played well, they executed well, and those coaches gave them a great plan. And that's all you can say. I mean, it didn't change the outcome. They had opportunities, just like they do most of the games this season, and they didn't come through with it. But look, the effort, the execution, defensively was really good. Offensively, they did what they could do. Listen, Drew Lock was Drew Lock. He made you crazy halfway through the game, and then all of a sudden he, breaks a big run, gets a first down, keeps the drive alive, right? But this is where they are. I mean, injuries have hit them probably at the worst time, but, in terms of how the coaches prepared them, not going into the game saying we have no shot because we don't have full strength and they are, more talented players are healthier than our not as talented players. Nope, they put a plan together. Those players went out and they played hard. They gave great effort and they played with great energy. And that's why that game came down to basically a final play.
As far as Trey Hawkins is concerned, a fractured lumbar in his spine sounds pretty damn bad. But at least from what I've been able to ascertain, the injury sounds worse than the recovery for it. So at first I was like, man, could this guy's career be over or whatever? But no, it's not the case. So he's going to have to heal up. So you talk about plans. Let's segue into this thing, because now you're dealing with a whole different level of talent coming at you. In the Baltimore Ravens, led by Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Henry's second in the league in rushing. They're second as a team in rushing. Lamar leads all quarterbacks. He's averaging 52 yards rushing per game. And then they got Justice Hill catching passes out of the backfield. They got Zay Flowers. They got Bateman. They got Andrews. They got Likely. The Giants are, again, ravaged with injuries. Now, I think this week it's the secondary that there's going to be some question marks because Newbin was placed on injured reserve. How do they even go about slowing down this train that is the Ravens?
Again, the number one thing that has plagued this Giant defense has been their inability to stop the run. So they've got to sell out to stop the run. Obviously, when you have a guy with the speed of Zay Flowers out there, you're going to have to give him some attention. Andrews is a guy that moves the chains for them. He can get behind your defense as a big old tight end. But your number one thing is don't let Derrick Henry just grind you to bits. You're going to have a similar effort, a similar plan to what you had against Kamara. And listen, the 53 yards, I welcome that from Lamar Jackson more so than Derrick Henry just chewing you up. Because, listen, I may even concede 100 yards to a quarterback if I can keep the running back to 50, because he's not passing it and he ain't handing it off to the other guy. So there's some benefit to that in a game that you're shorthanded in. I'd much rather have that happening than to just say, okay, he's going to throw the ball down the field and he's going to hand it off to Henry. I'd say, look, let's take away as much as we can, and if the quarterback has to run a little more than we've seen him in this season, so be it. That just means that you've taken two weapons out of their offense.
Philadelphia did a good job against him before the bye. The Eagles went down to Baltimore and they beat him. Henry had 19 carries for 82 yards in that game. And it feels like whenever Derrick Henry gets slowed down, including the 2022 season opener, Brian Dable's first game as head coach down in Tennessee, because of his size and his physicality, to force him east and west before he gets turned up field, you can't give him a clear lane to go through because then the locomotive's going. But when you get him going a little east-west, it's a little bit easier to tackle him because he doesn't have that head of steam and he ain't running you over. How did the Giants get him going east and west as much as possible?
Well, again, it's similar to what they deployed last week. It's playing gap defense. So you got to get guys in. Even if you're playing one gap defense, you're getting the ball carrier going east and west. You just can't play head up and let these guys either reach you or cut you off with these zone reads. You got to hit gaps and push the line of scrimmage horizontally so that the running back just doesn't see those holes and that just can't hit one cut and get north and south. You need him 2-3 steps before he even decides he can go north and south. And that's linebackers and defensive linemen predefine gaps and playing from there.
Carl, one of the things that's really hurt the Giants this year is opposing quarterbacks seem to have a pretty good read in certain situations, especially third downs, when the Giants are in man. And we've seen Joe Burrow take off on them. Obviously, we saw Jaden Daniels take off on him. We saw Baker Mayfield take off on him. We saw Bryce Young take off on him. Quarterbacks that have legs. It wasn't as big a fear last week with Derek Carr, but this week, my Lord, it's got to be something that if you're on the Giants side of things defensively, you have to be thinking that this is going to be part of their plan is for Lamar to drop back, see man, and then choose the one gap and then take off.
Yeah. So my guess is just given the lack of available personnel in the defensive backfield, you're not going to see a lot of man coverage anyway. They're going to try to keep everything in front of them. They're going to want to see the quarterback and they're going to want to see the running back. So you're going to want to have 11 eyes towards the line of scrimmage. And so, you don't have the available personnel to really line up and play man-to-man coverage anyway. You might have to double one guy or shade one guy, say Flowers, but I just can't imagine they would line up and play man-to-man coverage a lot because it hurts them both against the run and against the pass.
Baltimore defensively, we talked about this. They have been very susceptible in the pass game. I mean, they're 32nd in the NFL. And, I know they were number one against the rush, but I think that's a little bit misleading because teams aren't running it as much against them because you can have what you want in the passing game. Obviously, with the injuries the Giants have had at the quarterback, I think they're going to have Illuminor back in this game this week, which will definitely help having a veteran tackle in there. But how do you go about dissecting this defense? How do you go about getting after a defense that, they give up 25 points per game? I mean, they give up points.
Well, Bob, listen, they're a top team against the run. That means they commit to stopping it, right? That doesn't mean you have to stop running it. You have to commit to running it, even for minimal gain, because that means they're committing more players to stopping the run. Or if they're not committing more players, their guys aren't holding up. If they're giving up 25 points a game, their defensive backs aren't holding up. if they're just back there and they got 7 in the box and trying to stop the run. If they can do that effectively and they can't stop the pass. So I think you have to commit to running the football, and I think they did a good job of that against the New Orleans Saints. They're going to have to continue to do that. Just get your offense in rhythm and balance. And listen, Tommy DeVito's got legs too, right? So he can keep the chains moving himself. The RPO stuff, I think they put a little bit intentionally. They put a little bit of that bait on film when they threw him in the game, and they showed a little RPO there. That just gives the opponent next week something to look at. They didn't run an RPO with it. He handed the ball off, but they were intentional about putting him in and showing that play.
They've given up only one run of 25 or more yards, and that was Saquon Barkley in the last game, went for a 25-yard touchdown. Conversely, they have 16 runs of 25 or more, but they give up big pass plays. I mean, 30-yard pass plays, they've given up 15 of them. 6 have gone for touchdowns. I mean, heck, Jamar Chase has 4 touchdown catches of 70, 67, and 41 against them. So it is a little bit about how you scheme it up. And if you can protect long enough, Carl, there should be some shots down the field for a team that the Giants only have 6 pass plays of over 30 yards this year, and 4 of them belong to Darius Slayton.
Yeah, listen, there's still this guy called Malik Neighbors on the roster. There's Jalen Hyatt on the roster. So they have the ability to get behind people, but they've got to protect the quarterback. Quarterback has to make good decisions with the football, but I think they can scheme it. I think Coach Dable can get guys open. He can scheme them open. The quarterback has to make good decisions, and the offensive line has to do their job. But this is going to have to come via balance, and you can't get into a shootout. So that means your defense has got to get on and off the field. You can't allow a ton of points, and then you have to chase, because that's where you put your quarterback at risk and a lot of other things. You're just not built for it with the personnel that you have. So you have to create a game plan that will give your offense balance, give you a chance to move the football and exploit some of Baltimore's weaknesses.
Yeah, it'd be a good time to force your first red zone turnover of the year. The Giants they've turned it over 7 times in the red zone. They have not forced a red zone turnover. In fact, teams have hit against them, although the touchdown numbers are down. But damn, the Ravens have more touchdowns in the red zone than the Giants have trips in the red zone. They have 39 touchdowns in 52 trips, 75%, best in the NFL. If you could hold them to a couple of field goals or maybe get a tip ball or something where you can get an interception or force a fumble, like that could be the difference in the game.
Well, it's the difference is King Henry. I mean, he can rip off those 20 and 30-yard runs, man, and that's how they get down there so much. Their offense is balanced because they have a running back who can, he can churn you up. They've got to contain the run. That's what it really comes down to. Contain Henry. And you'll be able to, maybe keep them out of the red zone.
The Giants have lost 8 in a row. The franchise record is 9 in a row. 2019, 1976, and at the end of 03 and the start of 04. So they're going to try to avoid joining that group. Carl, I asked you when we started this podcast about how your tricep was feeling, and we went to the wrist in 1990, and you got hurt. And then you managed it, you came back out, and you played.
Mm-hmm.
You were also part of the 91 Giants, but more importantly, the 92 Giants, where, the wheels were kind of falling off with the Ray Handley era. The team was losing a lot. Things weren't going well. I mean, this team is mired. They haven't won a game since the game in Seattle. What's it like when you're in that environment? And how do you, as a leader, kind of keep pushing it forward when all the outside noise, there's speculation about everything right now. GM, coach, everything. People talking draft. How did you stay focused with your teammates?
Well, listen, we kind of the bones were there for our team. We're a prideful group. Um, Things got a little bit, well, not a little bit, a lot unplugged. Um, but we played with pride. I mean, we were a team that um, played with pride. We understood, what the game meant to us. We showed up and we did our job. We wouldn't allow ourselves or our teammates to come in and dog it. Like if we didn't have other things in place, one thing we did have was each other to play hard and not to put any bullshit on film. And that's really what it came down to. I mean, you'll look at that team, you're not going to see a lot of players loafing. You're not going to see poor effort because we didn't believe in it. We didn't believe in putting bullshit on film.
Yeah, and you had a lot of guys in that locker room like yourself that were two-time Super Bowl champs and
Yeah.
some one-time Super Bowl champs. Anything else you got on this game?
No, I mean, listen, they're shorthanded. What I'm looking for is a team that's going to come out, they're going to compete. I want to see a team with a plan, similar to the way they came out with the energy level and a game plan to try to win a football game, even though they were shorthanded against New Orleans. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not crazy in saying, well, the deck is loaded. There's no way they should lose this game. There's probably more probable loss than probability of win. But as my great coach Bill Parcells says, there's always a path to victory. It's whether or not you can do the things to follow that path. And so we'll see what happens. I think last week you got a chance to see what that path can be, but the breakdown was the breakdown, and it cost them, right? And so you can't say that they didn't get coached well. You can't say that they didn't play winning football. They did, but it just wasn't good enough in a season where you have to be good enough, if not even better than that. So we'll see. And listen, I know they've moved on to the draft and moved on to other speculation. And I'm here. I'm in the now because that's what we do. We got games to call, and I'm an analyst, and you're an analyst and a play-by-play guy. So we're gonna call it, right? And I'm gonna be fair about everything I see. And if you fans don't want to be a part of hearing the positive and the negative season, okay, you just don't have to listen or don't tune in. But, again, what we do is we try to be fair on both sides. So if we see something, like I said, for 8, 9 weeks, I've been killing this damn defense and its players for their lack of tackling. So when I see it get fixed, I'm gonna applaud that because they are professionals. It's their job. They should be getting better at those things. If I see a guy um, that was a backup cornerback who showed, you know, some promise his rookie year and then just kind of fell off the map when they put him in the action. I'm talking about Trey Hawkins, all of a sudden step into it and become a pro. I'm going to acknowledge that, right? Because I ripped him to shreds when he wouldn't tackle in Las Vegas. Or a kid like Cordell Flott, we talk about, teams that don't develop players. Well, there's some players, right? Cordell Flott was a guy who everybody said had all the tools, but he just didn't put it together. All of a sudden, he locked in, and he's, become one of your more reliable players, and dare I say, more reliable than your top draft pick in Tay Banks. So there's some things that I look for. Because these are components. No matter who's coaching this team, you can't turn over a 53-man roster or a 65-man roster. You ain't turning them all over, and it's not a matter of 4 players on your team or the 5 good players on your team. The supporting cast is always important, and you have to evaluate those players as well. And someone said to me, "Hey, what happened to Tay Banks? Did he regress, or did they ask him to do too much, Or are they asking him to do? I'm like, no, they're asking him to be a professional cornerback. He's a high draft choice. He's a kid that that was on everybody's board as one of the top 5 corners coming out in his draft. So the things that they're asking him to do are the things that he's drafted to do. What I'd like to see from him when he gets healthy is a recommitment to his craft, to his fundamentals. Because when you have cornerbacks, wide receivers from other teams talking about your lazy habits, then that means you're not committed to fixing the things that they're exploiting in you. McCurlin said he saw it in the Cleveland game, and the Cleveland game saw it somewhere else. So if you're
CD Lamb saw it, and Amari Cooper saw it, and everybody's seen it.
Right, and they're talking about it. Right. So they're only asking you, they're not asking you to do too much. I want you to ask yourself to be the best cornerback that you can be. Like, you go against an alpha wide receiver all training camp, right? Malik Neighbors can prepare you for anything, but yet in games there's been breakdowns. Now, I'm not talking about your injury history. I'm not even talking about your unwillingness to tackle. I'm just talking about the cornerback things, the coverage things, the fundamentals, the techniques that makes you and your defense better. When you have a young safety and you're a year older, you've got to be able to be a guy that he can count on so that he doesn't have to make mistakes. So these are things, folks, that I'm focused on now, because, again, they're not turning over, 53 men. They're not. You got your 5 or 6 guys that you guys think that are going to be here, but there are going to be more. There's probably going to be half of this roster here, and you've got to evaluate where those guys have to be in their careers. And, I want to see Jalen Hyatt continue. Listen, it hasn't been great for him, but it's not necessarily his fault either, right? I want to see him continue to show up every week with the same enthusiasm and play hard, because his time will come in this league, and hopefully it's with the New York Giants. I think the thing he has that you can't teach in this league is speed. He's got good ball skills. He just has not had the opportunity. And I hope that, he just continues to keep his great attitude about his job, because he is not touted one bit. And I know a guy like him wants to be able to participate more in this offense, and he just hasn't had the opportunity to do so.
All right, and wrapping up, in your wildest dreams, did you ever think that Bill Belichick would be the head coach at North Carolina?
No, but I'm happy for him, and wishing him luck.
You think how do you think it's going to transition?
He'll be fine. Bill's a teacher. He's a teacher more so than the word coach. He's more teacher than coach. And so they're gonna be some, well taught, fundamentally sound football players. And the fact that he can recruit like he's recruiting free agents, with the transfer portal and all these other things, it's not much different, other than the fact that he can now he can shape young minds, young athletes. And I think he'll be fine. I don't worry about whether he fits in. I think, it's a good opportunity for him to do something different. Obviously, he's won enough at the NFL level where he's not chasing Don Shula. I think his accomplishments speak for themselves. And, he decided, hey, this is an opportunity I want to be in coaching, and I can teach young minds. And here's the other thing too. He's got kids in coaching now, right? He's got a son and a daughter that are coaching. So at the college level. So, he's not foreign to this. I'm sure he had been advising them plenty over the last couple of years.
Yeah, the college game isn't the college game of 5 years ago or 10 years ago either. He's going to use the transfer portal. There's transfers. There's people coming in. There's money to be made. They have deep pockets.
Sure.
And he'll look for the more mature guys to bring in. It's not like he's going to have kids for 4 years for the most part
Correct.
there. It's just not the way the sport is anymore,
Right.
unfortunately.
Well, here's the other thing too, Bob. Just similar to what Nick Saban did and what the LSU program did and what the Clemson program did in Georgia, he's going to produce NFL-ready players. That's the beautiful part about it. And they may be better developed since he's sat around and looked at how bad offensive linemen are in terms of their development cycle.
Sure.
He may have some guys that are more day one ready than the guys that it's now taking, 4 years to even see if they can be average or serviceable. He's seen that. He's had to coach through that. He's had to find veteran players to fill in for rookies or young players who have yet to develop. So those are some insights that I'm sure pro teams are going to be looking at his program saying, okay, well, he can now get some transformation going where we don't have to hedge our bets with, a guy like Evan Neal who looked great in college and now at the pro level, he just hasn't quite developed yet. And we don't know if we need to cut bait here or, just, keep putting them out there in the water. But I mean, this is where we are with this, or an Eric Flowers type guy. And I'm just singling out these two guys because they're on the Giants roster, but it's all over the league. I mean, you look at Patrick Mahomes, what he's struggling with their top tackle. And this is year 2 for him, and he just hadn't quite gotten where they need him to be.
Yeah, I mean, he leaned on Ferenz in Iowa for years. If you look at when Shiano was first at Rutgers, how many Rutgers players wound up on the Patriots roster because he knew that he was getting a certain type player. And now he'll be the guy that can create, and especially with this system that exists, with the NIL money and the transfer portal and everything else, it's not the college game that we're all familiar with. In fact, Carl, and wrapping it up, the last pure college football game where transfer portal and NIL and everything else will never be a factor gets played on Saturday in Baltimore with Army and Navy. There's no transfer portal. There's no NIL money. There's none of that stuff.
Correct. Yeah.
It's actually the last bastion of college football as we remember it.
That is so true.
So hopefully Navy loses. Sorry, Bill Squires. How do we like to end this thing?
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
Believe in Giants.